first morning I woke up in Greyhaven House, the silence was so profound it felt like a physical thing, thick as fog, soft as the snow that had fallen overnight. I stood on the wraparound porch with my hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, watching the Atlantic churn grey and restless beyond the bluffs. Milo was asleep on the wicker chair behind me, his greying muzzle tucked against his paws. The old rescue dog had earned his peace. So had I. The house was mine in every way that mattered, though legally it belonged to the Seacliff Preservation Trust, a non-profit entity I'd established 18 months earlier with Marcus Caldwell, a Boston attorney who specialized in historic property law. The structure was deliberate. Bulletproof. After 2 years of systematically extricating myself from my family's financial chaos, I'd learned to build walls that couldn't be breached by charm, manipulation, or forged signatures. My father had taught me that last lesson well. The estate was a 19th century captain's house, weathered shingles the color of driftwood, with tall windows that faced the sea. I'd bought it under the trust's name at auction for less than it was worth. Foreclosure sale, structural issues, a reputation for being haunted that kept most buyers away. I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in isolation, anonymity, and the kind of peace that comes from being completely unreachable. I took a sip of coffee. It was 7:43 a.m. on January 2nd. The town of Crestfield, Maine, population 4,200, was still sleeping off New Year's celebrations. The only sound was the wind off the water and the distant groan of a plow working the coastal road. Then I heard the engines. 2 black SUVs came up the long gravel drive first, their tires crunching through fresh snow. Behind them, a moving truck, white and battered, with Massachusetts plates. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I knew those vehicles. I knew the people inside them. I set the mug down carefully on the porch rail. Milo lifted his head, ears pricked. The SUVs parked in a V formation blocking the driveway. The truck idled behind them. Doors opened. My father stepped out first, Gordon Whitaker, 61 years old, wearing a barber jacket and the easy smile of a man who talked his way out of every consequence his entire life. My mother followed, Diane, impeccably dressed even at this hour, her blonde hair styled in soft waves. Then my brother Ryan, 28, unshaven, wearing a Patriots hoodie and the expression of someone who just won a hand of poker he'd been bluffing on. I stayed on the porch. I didn't move. Gordon raised a hand in greeting, like this was a social call. Ellie. Sweetheart. We tried calling. I'd blocked their numbers 6 months ago. They knew that. This is private property, I said, keeping my voice level. You need to leave. Actually, Orion said, walking forward with a folder in his hand, we have every right to be here. He climbed the porch steps. I didn't back up. He was 3 inches taller than me, but I'd spent enough years watching him lie to debt collectors that his physical presence had lost its ability to intimidate. He opened the folder and held out a document. Signed lease agreement. You rented us the basement and outbuildings for 5 years at $1 per month. Signed November 15th. Your signature's right there. I took the paper. My hands didn't shake. I scanned it quickly. Standard residential lease template, property address correct, terms as he'd stated. And there, at the bottom, a signature that looked enough like mine to fool someone who didn't know better. I looked up at him. I didn't sign this. You did, and my mother said, stepping forward. Her voice had that practiced warmth she used at charity galas. You were going through a difficult time. You wanted to help. I was in Boston on November 15th, I said. Working. I have time-stamped security logs, calendar records, and 3 witnesses. Ryan shrugged. Memory's a funny thing when you're stressed. Behind them, the moving truck's rear door rolled up. 2 men in work coveralls began unloading boxes. "Stop," Eli said, louder now. "Stop unloading. This document is forged. You are trespassing." Gordon sighed, the disappointed father. "Ellie, honey, we know you've been struggling. We're worried about you. That's why we're here." "Call the police," Ei said. "Already did," Orion said, holding up his phone with a smirk. "Explained the situation. They're on their way to help us get settled." That was the moment I understood how thoroughly they'd planned this. 20 minutes later, Officer Brendan Kowalski stood in my foyer examining the lease while my family directed movers to carry furniture toward the basement stairs. Milo was locked in my bedroom upstairs, barking intermittently. I stood with my arms crossed, my phone recording everything. E. Kowalski said, this appears to be a civil matter. If there's a dispute about the lease, you'll need to resolve it through the courts." "The signature is forged," Ei said for the 4th time. "I never signed that document. That makes it criminal fraud and identity theft, not a civil dispute." "Do you have proof the signature isn't yours?" "I can provide authenticated copies of my actual signature from multiple legal documents, affidavits about my whereabouts that day, and testimony from a forensic document examiner." Kowalski looked uncomfortable. That's something you present to a judge. Right now, there's a signed lease and they're claiming tenancy rights. Unless you can prove to me right now that you didn't sign it." "I'm telling you I didn't sign it. And they're telling me you did." He glanced toward the basement stairs where Ryan was directing placement of server racks and industrial power strips. "Look, I can't forcibly remove people who have what appears to be a valid lease. You need to file an eviction proceeding." "Eviction takes 60 days in Maine," Ei said. "By then they'll have established residency and utilities in their names." "That's the point." Kowalski shifted his weight. I understand you're upset, but..." "Upset?" I kept my voice flat. "No. I'm documenting a crime in progress and you're enabling it." His jaw tightened. "I'm trying to keep the peace. Take it up with a lawyer." He left. The moving continued. By noon, they'd installed 3 industrial server racks in the basement, run extension cords through walls, and my father was on the phone with the power company trying to transfer the electrical account into Ryan's name using my social security number. I listened from the top of the basement stairs with my phone recording. "Yes, that's correct," Gordon was saying. "Eleanor Whitaker. Social security number." He recited it perfectly. My mother had provided it. She was the only one who would still have that information from years ago when I'd been naive enough to trust them with financial documents. I didn't confront them. I went upstairs, sat at my desk in the library, and opened my laptop. First, I photographed the forged lease from multiple angles with scale references. Then I scanned it at 600 dpi. I created a secure folder on an encrypted drive and began building a timeline document with timestamps, photographs, and video files. Then I called Marcus Caldwell. He answered on the 2nd ring. "Ellie. Happy New Year. How's the house?" "They found me," Ei said. "They're inside right now. Forged lease, police said it's civil, and they're setting up some kind of cryptocurrency mining operation in my basement." There was a brief pause. Then, did they bring the lease to the police?" "Yes." "And the police saw them enter the property based on that lease?" "Yes." "Good," Marcus said. "I heard papers rustling. That establishes their reliance on the forged document in the presence of law enforcement." Did you explicitly state the signature was forged? Multiple times. On recording. Even better. Now listen carefully. Do not physically interfere with them. Do not cut power. Do not change locks. Do not engage. Let them settle in. Are they causing property damage? Ryan cut the external power line to the heating system. Document it. Photograph the damage with timestamps. File a police report specifically for vandalism, separate from the tenancy dispute. Did they tell you what they're using the space for? Cryptocurrency mining. Ryan's bringing in commercial-grade equipment. Beautiful, Amarka said, and I heard the smile in his voice. Residential zoning violation, electrical code violation, and possibly noise ordinance violations. But here's the crucial thing, Ellie. And I need you to remember this. You don't own Greyhaven House. You personally have no legal standing to sign a lease for that property. The Seacliff Preservation Trust owns it. Exactly. Which means any lease agreement signed by you personally, even if you had signed it, would be void. You're not the property owner. You're the trust administrator. Only the trust, through proper board action and recorded vote, can execute a lease. And we never did that. I closed my eyes. The wall I'd built was holding. So the lease is void regardless of whether the signature is real. Correct. But the forgery makes it criminal. They didn't just create an invalid lease, they committed identity theft and fraud against a non-profit organization. Federal charges are possible. What do I do? Document everything. I'll file an emergency motion with the district court tomorrow morning. We'll also notify the Crestfield Historic Preservation Board. Greyhaven is on the Historic Register, which means any commercial use requires board approval. If Ryan's planning to run a business out of there, he's already violated the certificate of occupancy. How long until we can remove them? With an invalid lease and criminal fraud? Days, not weeks. But Ellie, you need to be strategic. Let them commit fully. Let them invest time and money. Let them tell everyone they're living there. The deeper they dig, the harder the legal consequences. That sounds like letting them win. That sounds like letting them build their own cage. I spent the next 72 hours in what I thought of as siege mode. I moved my bedroom to the second-floor library, which had a lock on the door and a private bathroom. I kept Milo with me. I installed a secondary deadbolt on the library door and a security camera in the hallway. I heard them moving around downstairs, footsteps, voices, the hum of electronics equipment. Ryan was running server racks 24 hours a day. The electrical drawer was enormous. I could hear the house's old wiring straining. I documented everything. Every sound. Every utility bill showing usage spikes. Every photograph of equipment visible through basement windows. On January 5th, my mother launched her social media campaign. It started with a Facebook post at 6:47 a.m. Heartbroken tonight. After everything we've done for our daughter, she's locked us out in the middle of winter. Ryan was trying to get his life together, and Ellie won't even let him have a place to stay. We raised her better than this. Pray for our family. Broken heart. The post included a photograph of the exterior of Greyhaven House taken at dusk, lights glowing in windows, looking warm and inviting. The caption made it seem like they were standing outside in the cold. Within 6 hours, it had 200 reactions and 50 comments. Most of them sympathetic. Some children have no gratitude. After all you did for her? This generation is so selfish. I read through every comment with clinical detachment. Then I took screenshots, added them to my evidence folder with timestamps and archive links, and noted the exact wording of the defamation. My mother posted again that evening. "We're so worried about Ellie. She hasn't been herself lately. We try to help her with the house, but she's been so paranoid and hostile. We just want her to get the help she needs. This is breaking Gordon's heart." More comments. More shares. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. On January 7th, the utility fraud began showing up in my alerts. I had monitoring software on all my accounts: credit, banking, utilities, medical records. The alerts started coming in rapid succession. National Grid account change request. New account holder: Ryan Whitaker. Property: Greyhaven House. Comcast service transfer. Authorization using Social Security number ending in 7783. Water district billing change. Account transfer approved. Each one required my SSN or other identity authentication. Each one was processed using information my mother had provided to Ryan. I filed a police report with Officer Kolsky, who looked more uncomfortable than the first time. "This is identity theft," EI said, handing him printed documentation. "Federal crime. Here's the FTC identity theft report I filed online. Here are the utility fraud affidavits. Here's the forensic analysis of the forged lease signature compared to my authenticated signatures from passport and banking documents." He flipped through the pages, frowning. "This is, or look, Ms. Whitaker, this is getting complicated. The lease thing, the utilities, oh, have you talked to a lawyer?" "My attorney is filing motions as we speak. But I need you to take a formal report documenting identity theft. That's not optional. I'm the victim of a crime." "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay. I'll file the report. I also need you to document that I've requested criminal investigation of the forged lease. The DA's office would have to. Then forward it to the DA's office." He did, eventually. I left the police station with case numbers and copies of everything I'd submitted. The bureaucracy was slow, but it was moving. Marcus filed the emergency motion on January 8th. The hearing was scheduled for January 15th, 8 days out. In the meantime, Ryan's operation was expanding. I could hear it through the walls: constant humming, fans running, heat pouring out of the basement even in winter. The electrical meter was spinning like a slot machine. The first utility bill that hit my account showed usage 3 times normal. I forwarded it to Marcus. He forwarded it to the town's building inspector and the Historic Preservation Board. On January 10th, I received a phone call from Caroline Hayes. "Ms. Whitaker? This is Caroline Hayes. I run Crestfield Community Watch. It's a local news blog covering town governance and public interest stories. I've been seeing some concerning posts on social media about you and your family, and I'm also seeing some public records that don't match up. Would you be willing to talk on the record?" I'd researched Caroline before moving to Crestfield. Former investigative journalist for the Portland Press Herald, early 50s, respected locally, no patience for corruption or fraud. "Yes," EI said. "But I need your word that you'll verify everything independently before you publish." "That's the only way I work." We met at a coffee shop in town the next morning. I brought 3 binders. The first contained the forged lease with forensic signature analysis. The second contained utility fraud documentation and identity theft reports. The third contained photographs of Ryan's commercial server operation in the basement, electrical code violations, and zoning ordinance documentation. Caroline went through them methodically, taking notes, asking sharp questions. "Does the Preservation Board know about the commercial operation? She asked. They were notified by my attorney on January 8th. I believe they are planning an inspection. And your family is claiming they have legal tenancy? Based on a document I didn't sign, for a property I don't personally own. She looked up. You don't own Greyhaven House? The Seacliff Preservation Trust owns it. I'm the trust administrator. The property was purchased through the trust to preserve it as a historic site and prevent personal liability claims. Caroline sat back. So even if you had signed that lease, it would be void. I have no legal authority to lease trust property without board approval. She smiled slowly. That's elegant. That's necessary. My family has a history of financial exploitation. I learned to build legal structures that can't be breached. Tell me about that history. I did. I told her about the investment loan my father convinced me to co-sign when I was 26, how it defaulted and destroyed my credit. I told her about the years I spent rebuilding, the deliberate estrangement, the creation of the trust with Marcus's help. This isn't a family dispute, I said. This is a pattern of fraud being perpetrated by people who view me as a financial resource they're entitled to exploit. Caroline recorded everything. She verified the trust registration, pulled property records, confirmed the historic preservation designation, and requested comment from my parents and Ryan. Ryan responded via Facebook message, Ellie's lying. She's always been dramatic. We have a legal lease. My mother declined to comment. My father sent a 3-paragraph message claiming I was mentally unstable and they were trying to help me. Caroline published the article on January 13th at 6 a.m. The headline, A Forgery, Identity Fraud, and Zoning Violations at Historic Greyhaven House. It was thorough, meticulously sourced, and devastating. Caroline laid out the timeline, the forged lease, the trust ownership structure, the utility fraud, and the illegal commercial operation. She included photographs of the basement server racks visible through windows, quotes from the zoning ordinance, and a statement from the Historic Preservation Board chair confirming they'd issued a cease and desist order to Ryan. The comments section on her blog exploded. The sympathetic comments on my mother's Facebook posts turned cold. Did you read the article? They forged a lease. Identity theft against your own daughter? This isn't a family dispute. This is fraud. My mother deleted her original posts. By then they'd been screenshotted and shared across multiple local Facebook groups. Ryan posted a video rant calling Caroline a hack journalist and claiming the article was defamation. He threatened to sue. Caroline responded in the comments, Everything in my article is documented with public records and verified sources. I welcome legal review. The pressure was building. I could feel it in the house, the tension, the anger, the desperation. They'd committed fully, told everyone they were living there, set up the operation. Now the public narrative had shifted and they were trapped. On January 14th, Ryan started sending me text messages. You're going to regret this. You always were a selfish bitch. We're not leaving. Try and make us. I forwarded every message to Marcus and Officer Kowalski. I didn't respond to any of them. The court hearing was on January 15th. Marcus appeared on behalf of the Seacliff Preservation Trust. My father and Ryan appeared with a public defender who looked like he'd been assigned the case that morning. The judge reviewed the evidence for approximately 12 minutes. The lease is void, as she said flatly. Ms. Whitaker has no authority to lease trust property. The signature appears to be forged, which is a separate criminal matter. The defendants are ordered to vacate the premises within 72 hours. Any property remaining will be considered abandoned. Ryan stood up. That's not. Sit down, the judge said. You're also ordered to cease all commercial operations immediately. The building inspector's report indicates serious electrical code violations and fire hazards. If you're not out in 72 hours, the sheriff will remove you. They left the courthouse in fury. I left with Marcus. They'll try something, I said. Probably. I want to be ready. Marcus looked at me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking they're going to do something stupid in public, and I want witnesses. That night, I started planning. The idea came to me while I was walking Milo on the beach at sunset. Greyhaven House had a long tradition. Back in the 19th century, the original owners had hosted elaborate New Year's gatherings for the town's prominent families. I'd found photographs in the Historical Society archives. I was going to revive that tradition. I made a list: Mayor Jennifer Walsh, Sheriff Paul Drummond, Historic Preservation Board members, Caroline Hayes, Town Council members, local business owners, the harbour master, the librarian. 30 people total. I handwrote invitations on cream cardstock with the Greyhaven House seal embossed at the top. You are cordially invited to a New Year's reception at Greyhaven House, celebrating the restoration and preservation of this historic property. Thursday, January 30th, 7 p.m. cocktail attire. RSVP by January 25th. I mailed them on January 16th. Ryan and Gordon didn't leave in 72 hours. They left equipment in the basement and disappeared for 2 days, then returned with a new plan. On January 20th, Ryan posted on Facebook. Despite legal harassment, we're staying. This is our home and we have rights. New Year's resolution: stand up to family bullies. Flexed biceps. Marcus called me. Is setting up for an adverse possession claim. Can he do that? Not successfully, but he can try. It would take years to litigate, and in the meantime he'd argue right to occupancy. He's desperate. Ellie. That makes him dangerous. I know. I knew exactly how dangerous desperation made them. I'd watched my father burn through business partnerships, friendships, family connections, always charming until the money ran out, then vicious when people tried to hold him accountable. The RSVPs for the New Year's reception started coming in. 27 confirmed. 2 declines. 1 no response. On January 25th, I called a catering company in Portland. On January 27th, I met with Daniel Mercer for the first time. He was the marine archaeologist I'd hired to reinforce the property's stone wall along the coastal bluff. He showed up in a pickup truck with tools and a yellow lab named Maggie. He was maybe 40, weathered in the way people get when they work outside, with dark hair going grey at the temples and the kind of quiet competence I'd learned to value. You're the one dealing with the family situation, he said, shaking my hand. News travels fast. Small town. Caroline's article made the rounds. He walked the perimeter of the property, examining the gate Ryan had damaged, the security camera mounts, the basement windows. You expecting more trouble? Yes. Want me to reinforce the gate? Please. He worked for 3 days. He replaced the gate hardware with commercial-grade locks, installed motion sensor lights, and reinforced the basement window frames with steel bars that looked decorative but were functional. He didn't ask many questions. I appreciated that. On January 29th, the day before the reception, Ryan posted another video. He was standing outside Greyhaven House with a girlfriend I didn't recognize, pretty, early 20s, holding a phone like she was recording everything. Tomorrow night, Ryan said to the camera, we're taking back what's ours. Ellie thinks she can throw us out? We'll see about that. This house belongs to the Whittaker family and we're not going anywhere. Come back tomorrow for the big show. The video had 200 views in an hour. I watched it twice. Then I called Sheriff Drummond. Paul, I said, I need to show you something. He came to the house that evening. I showed him Ryan's video, the threatening text messages, the timeline of escalating behavior. He's planning to force entry tomorrow, I said. During my event. Drummond was in his late 50s, silver-haired, ex-military. You think he's going to break in while you have guests? I think he's going to break in expecting the house to be empty. He doesn't know about the reception. You didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone publicly. Paper invitations only. Drummond looked at me for a long moment. You set a trap. I created a situation where if he commits a crime, there will be witnesses with credibility. 30 witnesses. That's cold. That's documentation. He almost smiled. I'll have deputies nearby. If he shows up, we'll be ready. January 30th was clear and cold. I spent the afternoon preparing the house, candles in the windows, fires in both parlor fireplaces, the dining room table set with crystal and silver I'd found in the attic. The caterers arrived at 5 p.m. with champagne, oysters, and canapes. At 6:45 p.m., I stood in the front parlor wearing a midnight blue dress and pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. Milo was upstairs in the library with a bone and his favorite blanket. Daniel Mercer was outside directing guest parking away from the front drive. I'd asked him to help coordinate and he'd agreed without hesitation. Guests were instructed to enter through the garden entrance at the side of the house. From the street, Greyhaven House looked dark and empty. By 7:15 p.m., 29 people were inside, drinks in hand, talking in warm clusters. Mayor Walsh was admiring the restored crown molding. Caroline Hayes was interviewing the Preservation Board chair. Sheriff Drummond was by the window with a clear view of the front drive. At 7:47 p.m., headlights appeared on the access road. A pickup truck, Ryan's. Behind it, a sedan. My father was driving. Drummond touched his radio. Subjects arriving. The trucks stopped at the gate. Ryan got out with bolt cutters. The girlfriend, I heard someone say her name was Sabrina Cole, was filming on her phone. Ryan cut the gate chain. The sound was sharp in the cold air. They drove through, parked in the front circle. 4 people got out: Ryan, Sabrina, my father, and someone I didn't recognize. Male, 30s, probably one of Ryan's friends. Ryan walked to the front door with the bolt cutters still in hand. He tried the door, locked, obviously, then said something to my father. Gordon stepped forward with a crowbar. Sabrina was narrating for her phone. We're here at Ellie's house, taking back what belongs to the Whittaker family. She's been lying about everything. Time to show people the truth. Gordon jammed the crowbar into the doorframe and pried. Wood splintered. The door swung open. They stepped inside. The foyer was blazing with light. 30 people turned to look at them. The mayor. The sheriff. The town council. Caroline Hayes with her phone recording. The Preservation Board members. Daniel Mercer by the staircase. Ryan froze. Sabrina's phone was still recording, capturing everything. The bolt cutters in Ryan's hand, the crowbar in Gordon's hand, their faces when they realized what they'd walked into. Sheriff Drummond stepped forward. Ryan Whittaker, Gordon Whittaker, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, burglary, criminal mischief, and possession of burglary tools. Sabrina Cole, you're being detained for questioning as a possible accessory. 2 deputies moved in from the dining room. They'd been waiting inside. Ryan backed up. This is bullshit. This is our house. It's not, Mayor Walsh said. Her voice was cold. We all saw the court order, Ryan. You were legally evicted. This is breaking and entering. Sabrina was still filming. Her video was live streaming to Facebook. The view count was climbing. 300, 500, 800. Gordon dropped the crowbar. He looked at me across the foyer, and for the first time in my life I saw him understand that he'd lost. Ellie, he said. Sweetheart. This is a misunderstanding. No, I said. It's not. The deputies handcuffed them. Sabrina's live stream captured every second. The handcuffs, the Miranda rights, Ryan shouting threats, Gordon's face going red. The viewer count hit 2,000. They were walked out through the front door they'd just broken. The guests watched in silence. Then the deputies loaded them into patrol cars and the vehicles pulled away, lights flashing. Caroline Hayes turned to me. Did you plan this? I planned a reception to celebrate the house's restoration, I said. They planned to commit felony burglary. I'm glad there were witnesses. She smiled. I'm glad I brought my camera. The party continued. The broken door frame became a conversation piece. Daniel Mercer helped me secure the door temporarily with a piece of plywood and deck screws. He worked quietly while guests mingled around us. That was something, he said. That was necessary. He looked at me. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone angrier. Someone more. He gestured vaguely. Roar. I was angry, I said. 2 years ago. Now I'm just careful. He handed me a screw to hold. Careful looks good on you. The charges were filed within 48 hours. Breaking and entering, felony burglary, possession of burglary tools, criminal mischief, identity theft, fraud, forgery. The DA added conspiracy charges for Gordon based on the text message evidence. Sabrina's live stream had been viewed 30,000 times. It had been shared across Maine community groups, picked up by local news stations, and dissected in comment sections across the internet. You could watch the exact moment Ryan and Gordon walked into a room full of witnesses and realized they'd been outplayed. It was beautiful. My mother was not charged. There was no direct evidence she'd participated in the break-in, and her role in providing my social security number was harder to prove. But her social media presence evaporated. Her friends stopped commenting. Her reputation in her country club community disintegrated. That was its own kind of justice. Ryan took a plea deal in March, guilty to breaking and entering, identity theft, and fraud. 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, restitution for property damage and legal fees. Gordon went to trial. He was convicted in April on all counts. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Sentencing was scheduled for June. I attended every hearing. I sat in the gallery with Marcus beside me and watched the legal system grind forward with excruciating slowness and eventually, finally, accountability. By May, Greyhaven House was fully restored. The front door had been rebuilt. Daniel did the work himself, matching the original design with new mahogany and brass hardware. The basement had been cleared of Ryan's equipment. The power lines had been repaired. The gardens were coming back to life with spring crocuses and daffodils. Milo's arthritis was better in the warmer weather. He spent afternoons sleeping on the porch again while I worked in the library, reviewing security audits for my Boston clients remotely. Daniel came by most weekends. Sometimes he brought coffee. Sometimes we walked the beach with Milo and Maggie. He told me about shipwreck sites he was mapping off the coast. I told him about digital forensic frameworks and encryption protocols. It shouldn't have worked, marine archaeology and cybersecurity, but somehow it did. In early June, I installed a brass plaque at the entrance gate. Greyhaven House. Property of Seacliff Preservation Trust. Estimated 1847. Restored 2026. Entry by invitation only. Daniel helped me mount it. We stood back and looked at it together. How does it feel? He asked. Permanent, I said. He smiled. Good. That evening I sat on the porch with Milo and watched the sun set over the Atlantic. The sky was coral and gold. The air smelled like salt and beach roses. The house was quiet behind me, the good kind of quiet, the kind that feels like safety instead of isolation. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Gordon sentenced today. 3 years federal, 5 years probation. Judge said the exploitation of family trust was an aggravating factor. It's over, Ellie. I read it twice. Then I looked out at the water. It was over. The invasion, the siege, the legal battle. The years of rebuilding and protecting myself. I'd won, not through cruelty or revenge, but through documentation, legal structure, and the willingness to let them bury themselves in front of witnesses. Protection isn't cruelty. Setting boundaries isn't abandonment. Choosing who enters your life, your home, your trust, your peace, isn't selfishness. It's power. I set the phone down and scratched Milo's ears. He groaned contentedly and shifted closer. Behind us, through the open window, I could hear Daniel in the kitchen making tea. He'd started keeping a spare mug here. I hadn't asked him to. He just had. The waves rolled against the shore in their ancient rhythm. The sky deepened from coral to violet. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked the way old houses do, settling into itself. I picked up my tea and took a sip. It was exactly the right temperature. Everything was exactly right.